poisoning. But then, because I know some kinds of pigmentation discolorations can happen because of technology and less than lethal weapons, it's possible that part of the reason I was feeling dizzy is because I was being hit by less than lethal weapons as well. That caused an alteration of pigmentation. But I did kind of think that it had something to do with the poison that I had ingested. And then I read that, or that had affected me. And I read that arsenic, so I did some research on arsenic because basically this is right after I had this really, really horrible bleeding. And probably in combination with other kinds of assault, I think. But I read that one of the effects, or sometimes a symptom or lasting result of arsenic poisoning, is pigmentation changes to the skin, which I definitely had. And it also said that your nails will change, and I had already noticed that my nails were different. Like, for the first time ever, my nails were typically unpainted, kind of cut fairly short and unpainted, or with a clear paint or something like that, or neutral color. But I didn't have any color on my nails at all. It hadn't for a long time, and I looked down, and I was always aware of my nails, maybe because sometimes I chew around the cuticles a little bit, but I noticed that after I was poisoned with this arsenic, that the color had changed in my nail bed, and I had a separation of color from one part of my nail to another part, and there was kind of a white line. There was a faint white line in the center of all my nails. And so here I am reading about arsenic, or not just arsenic, but forms of arsenic, things that do the same kind of thing. And another symptom of that kind of poisoning is having that kind of a demarcation in your nail beds, which I had. It wasn't the most extreme of examples because I went online, of course, and you see some of these horrible photos. But it was definitely a noticeable change. It was the first time there was a change to my nail color, and it was definitely there. It was present and I could see it. And I thought it was really strange because later I was approached by a doctor who was Japanese, and he told me that he was a doctor, and I'm not sure why this Japanese doctor made himself available to me all of a sudden for some reason, because I had been blogging about there's something wrong. I really got poisoned. And then he was on Bainbridge Island, and for whatever reason he and his wife sort of approached me when I was sitting at a table outside of this coffee shop that I went to. And this was like a day or two later. And he wrote it off. He was very dismissive about it. He said, "Oh, I showed him." And he said, "Oh, that's nothing. That's not." And I knew that he was lying. And I thought, why is this Japanese-American doctor lying to me? Like, why does he want to put in his 2 cents as a doctor and try to have me think that it's really nothing when I know it is something? And that coffee place that I say I was outside of, well, the next morning, this man said who had been my cab driver, and there was somebody there were a couple guys from Scotland. They were getting off the ferry. And I never forgot the Scottish guys because I heard the Scottish accent. And I remember thinking, and I saw that they were kind of stalking me. And I thought, why are these 2 Scottish men stalking me around on an island? I mean, Bainbridge Island. Who are these Scottish guys? And they were kind of laughing. They were laughing at me, and they were stalking me for a while, and then laughing at me. And then they left. Then they left the island. But they were there the first night that I was there. And the first night, and yeah, but it was, the Scottish accent is very different from English and Australian and everything. It's once you learn a little bit about some of the different accents, it wasn't hard for me to pick out at all. They were Scottish. And there are two of them. So basically they watched me and were watching all of my interactions with the cab driver, because I had to wait around for a while before I even got a cab. And then he had to, I think, do a little bit of wrap up some business with a couple of other clients first. And so I was waiting there outside for a while. Anyway, the next day, that cab driver said he wanted to take me to this coffee place, and I said, okay. And I went there, and then that's when this woman, I've blogged about this, there was a woman who had a white Macintosh laptop computer, and she sat across from me. She had blonde hair, a very long face, sat across from me, and basically I was being tortured all of a sudden. I was sitting in this coffee shop, and I noticed the effects of torture, and I tried not to look like I was looking around or anything, and because I would feel sort of stupid, because I felt that somebody was watching for that. They were looking for a reaction, and the person looking for a reaction was her. She kept looking over the top of her laptop to look, and every single time that I felt a twinge of something, some sort of technology assault from something, she was looking to see what my reaction was. And only then. It wasn't like she was staring at me the whole time. She was only looking specifically at times when something happened to me. And I wasn't reacting at all. So it wasn't like I was reacting and then she looked up. I was totally quiet and kept myself collected. And she kept looking up to see if I was suffering. And she had this horrible malicious look on her face and a little smirk. I just had the worst feeling about her. And then there was a different guy that was working there at that coffee place when she was there, and he was from Australia. And he worked his very last day there after I had showed up there at that coffee place. So basically, I got introduced. The cab driver knew the guy from Australia, and then they started talking. He said, "So you're going back, huh?" And they started chatting about how this one Australian man was going back to Australia. The only international people that I specifically remember, there could have been all kinds of international people there, but I specifically remember the Australian man who worked at that coffee shop, who knew the cab driver. I remember the two Scottish men, young men, like early 20s to mid 20s. And I remember this man wearing a hockey jersey. I think it was a hockey jersey, coming into the place with his significant other, a woman. And I had some kind of a feeling that he was Canadian connected. And he came into this basically after I was assaulted at this coffee shop place. The other person that knew was this man who drove me there, who was the cab driver, but I had no place to stay. And I knew that he had to have known something, but I wasn't sure exactly how much. So when he said that I could stay at his house, I took his offer because I didn't have any other option. And he was a much older man, and he knew that there was no interest for me whatsoever, so it wasn't like that. So I stayed a night at his house, and then the next morning, and he said, "What's your plan?" And I said, "Well, I think I need to be checked out at a medical facility for something, but I also want to look for work real quick since I'm here." So the next day, I put in applications, or filled out applications, I should say, and talked to people throughout almost the entire town of Bainbridge, which is pretty small. And this one woman at an Italian place did let me work for her, but just for one day. She basically kind of hired me for a day, and then she started acting really nervous. And it was basically sometime after this man who I had an impression was Canadian I thought he was either Canadian or FBI, like had come over from Seattle FBI, but I had a little more of a feeling that he was somehow connected to Canada. And he was talking to me, bringing up something about, he had a penguin shirt on. Some kind of a penguin jersey or shirt. And anyway, she had hired me on the spot to at least earn a little bit of money while I was there. So I was helping her out, and then I saw that he was talking to her privately to the side. Like, I had to go out to get something from the storage, and I was working in the back, and then as soon as he had an opportunity, I saw him whispering and then looking over and hoping that I could tell that he was hoping I wasn't around or wouldn't hear, and he was talking to her in quiet tones about me, and I knew that he was defaming me to her about something. I didn't know if he was bribing her to fire me or if he was just defaming me to her. But shortly after he had a private talk with her and kept looking over at me and then kind of mocked me as they left, she fired me. So she had hired me and then fired me in the same day. It was the quickest hire and fire I've ever had. And I personally do not think there was really no reason for it. I mean, like, I hadn't done anything out of the ordinary, and I was doing a good job. So the only thing of significance that had happened is that that couple came in and they were talking to her privately in hushed tones about me, and I knew it was about me, and they kept hoping that I wasn't listening. So I really wondered who this person was that had come in to try to sabotage my work, or had maybe offered to pay her to get rid of me. Because, it was some sort of weird thing, because it was a very strange thing that happened. He didn't have, I don't know that I noticed an accent, like a really strong accent at all. I mean, I had a feeling that he was Canadian connected, but I didn't hear any of the really some of the distinct Canadian slang. I had this feeling he's either Canadian connected or FBI connected. And then I was looking for work again, and I stayed at that one house with this one man a couple of days, and then he was driving me, he had a convertible, he was driving me in his convertible downtown and playing this Sweet Baby James song, or no, it was James Taylor, and it was, Susan, the plans they made put an end to you, that one. And I said, can you just change the station? Because it was like I was a laughingstock. I all of a sudden noticed that there were a lot of different people just watching me on that island. And it began to feel uncomfortable. And then at one point I was walking outside, and this woman walked alongside me, and I believe she was British. So I guess that was one additional person. So when I was on that island, because I had this odd pigmentation change to my skin color, and because I had been poisoned and I didn't